get Twitch up.
Alright, we're connected.
Alright, I just need to get Twitch online. I'm gonna keep an eye on that. And you still have the dual chat?
Yes, I do. Got it all up.
Alright. Twitch.tv/Knead To Know.
Hey, we got Bella already.
Oh, she's in? That's good.
Apparently. Awesome. Good to see you.
Why is it? There we go. Yeah, let's desktop mode. Suck up. We should be live right now, yeah?
Yeah, we are. Hang on, give me just a quick second.
There we go.
We are live, but just a quick second.
What a dick. Wow. Man, the Twitch crashes on my phone.
Having too much of a Twitch crash?
Yeah, for some reason it's crashing my web browser, so I'm going to try the app and see if I can make that magic happen there. Maybe, maybe not. We'll find out. We got a big show today. A lot of stuff.
We do. 16 something.
Yeah, I've been trying to make 15 my goal. So if I can wrap up the show, yeah, I think about 15 clips or so is about the size of the show. If there's some shorter ones, I can add one or two. But for the most part, because I've had some feedback before that maybe we should cut down the clips in the show, like cut them down to size. But honestly, like with what we watch and the analysis that we do, we kind of have to watch like the whole clip with the audience to have context.
Basically, yeah. In order to make sure that everything does have the context that we're wanting to put it in.
Definitely not trying to cherry pick, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Alright. Apparently I didn't even have the Twitch app installed on my phone, so I gotta drag that thing over. We have our
You're not the only one, hippie.
Still on the phone? Oh, I know, right?
One hippie.
One hippie?
Yeah, just talking to everybody who's in the chat. Or across platforms right now. They can't really see each other yet because we still have the what is it, that please stand by thing on everything. Yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, so
gotcha.
they can't see everybody yet, but we can see them a lot more.
That's dirty. Had to do it. Had to be done. Oh, come on, load.
I have no idea how many people are watching.
Let's see here. I think we've only got a few people watching right at the moment.
That's all good.
Let me make sure that I get in the chat before we get going, because I want to be able to interact.
Tinfoil prop is out and ready.
Who's that lady on the nightly news that, like, she always has, like, a prop? Like, every time she talks, she's, like, got a news story going on, she just, like, brings out, like, a sheaf of papers.
I forget her name, but you showed her to us before. It was whenever the IG report came out or something. It was just a huge, huge book. You said, wait, she's always got a prop, and then you wait till she pulls it out, and then boom.
She always does, dude. And when, like, the few times that she doesn't, I get disappointed. Like, I've been waiting for it.
Oh, I was waiting for Carrot Top.
I'm kvetching, love. Gotta do it. Gotta do it. We're going this way. Let's go. All right. What? Oh, Jesus.
What'd you find?
Oh, nothing. Just setting up a Twitch account is stupid. I set up a new one for my phone because I couldn't remember my password off the top of my head. There we go. There's a live chat.
Hey, what do you know? He can see everybody. Hi guys.
Alright, let me see. I'm gonna... Alright.
Pardon?
There we go. Okay. I needed to make sure that I muted the audio on the video feed in Twitch. Alright. This is gonna be a fun day.
Yeah, it is, indeed.
Alright, so let me pull up my show notes here. Sorry, this is a slow start today, guys. But we got a good show for you.
It's alright. It's a Sunday. Sorry for that. My bad. Ugh.
Alright. Alright, so you're just about ready to get us going here?
Yeah, I think so. We ain't got political with us yet, but he'll join us in a bit.
Do we want to ping him one more time and see if he's ready? Here, I got it.
Yeah. Can't touch the keyboard, otherwise everything goes away.
Don't do it.
Perfect cue with a nice fade out too.
Nice. Man, we got a lot of stuff to talk about today.
Indeed we do. So, should we just jump on in?
Yeah, let's go ahead and jump in and see if we can get it going. Yeah. Alright. Roll the music. Roll the tapes!
And howdy again there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome once again to the Need to Know podcast. Coming to you live on Sunday, August the 19th. A lovely, lovely day. It's one of your hosts, General Tweed, speaking here. We've got... What are you going by now today, Breadbox?
Well, I'm still Breadbox, but I'm aesthetic.
You're aesthetic, Breadbox. Cool. We got aesthetic Breadbox with us. Political will be joining us in just a bit. And I think that's about that. Yeah. If he hasn't already joined us.
I think yeah, he'll be with us shortly. So let's get the ball rolling, and then he can jump in.
All right, sounds good.
So normally we've got Korea at the top of the list, and this week we actually had a little bit more than just checking in with Iran news. So they are taking priority. So let's go ahead and check in. We've only really got one clip because it's a big story, but there's really not much to say other than that it happened. So let's take a look at it.
Jumping straight in.
So it is August, and it's plenty hot up here on the roof, and President Trump is at his summer home in New Jersey, but he's hardly kicking back. Tonight, he is upping the ante against Turkey and Russia and Iran, a triumvirate that is bonding over mutual and despised U.S. sanctions against all of them. The president announcing that he will double steel and aluminum tariffs on Turkey, Earlier this week, the president issued what he called the most biting sanctions ever imposed against Iran. And now Fox News has confirmed that Iran has test-fired a ballistic missile or short-range ship missile for the first time this year. Meanwhile, President Trump imposed sanctions against Russia over the chemical weapons attack in London on a spy and his daughter. Those new sanctions met with fury from Prime Minister Medvedev, who issued this threat today.
If
something like a ban on bank operations or currency use follows, it will amount to a declaration of economic war, and it will warrant a response with economic means, political means, and if necessary, other means. Our American friends should understand that.
Necessary other means, he says. Here now to break all this down for us, General Jack Keane, chairman of the Institute for the Study of War, and Fox News strategic analyst. General, always good to see you. Thank you.
Yeah, good to see you, Martha. Welcome.
Right.
Thank you. Great to be here. Let's kind of go around the horn here on what's going. First of all, with Iran.
Oh, how clever! How clever she said around the horn.
In exercises that they say they moved up to the summer time frame because of these sanctions. They usually do it in the fall. What do you take from that?
Well, clearly Iran is trying to send a message to the Trump team here based on the sanctions they're imposing. They fired a missile 2 to 3 weeks after the inauguration, test-fired ballistic missiles. Trump came right out, sanctioned them, and said malign behavior again is going to be worse coming from the United States. We're not going to put up with this. And they haven't done anything like that since. They're doing it now because they're pretty much under our boot when it comes to the sanctions we're imposing on them. They are significant in terms of taking them out of the dollar financial market. Implication, it may spread to the international market as well, and then shutting down gold, precious metals, aluminum, steel, graphite, coal, automobiles, and a long list of things. And next, coming November, is when we go after oil and the energy sector, and that is going to be very imposing on the Iranians. Their economy is already in the tank. It is struggling severely. And the real is their currency. It is almost close to being valueless. And black market is the way of doing business in Iran. So the pressure is on them. And come November, it'll be on them like it's never been before.
So if they're backed into a corner and you look at the Strait of Hormuz, is that an option for them to block that?
If they block the Strait of Hormuz, we will take out literally all their military on the Strait of Hormuz. That's an act of war if they pull a stunt like that. And they know what the results of that will be. And that will push the United States into conflict. Iran does not want conflict with the United States. Remember, 38 years of conflict, all using proxies, avoiding direct confrontation with their own military. That is one thing. Despite the fact that they harass our ships, they'll fire a missile here and there, they do not want that kind of conflict.
What about Turkey? Obviously, it roiled the markets today. Right. Their economy is under tremendous pressure, and Erdogan lashing out, making phone calls to Putin. We know that Secretary Pompeo also spoke to his counterpart in Russia today. A lot of tensions there. Yeah,
Turkey's facing a political and a financial crisis. The political crisis really goes back to the coup of 2016, when Erdogan nearly was toppled, and not a single NATO nation, to include the United States, provided any moral support. Nobody spoke in his favor because he's moving that regime to an authoritarian regime, moving it away from democracy. And as a result of that, he came out and he said, I want the leader who was the catalyst for this coup, who resides in the United States, a guy by the name of Fethullah Gulen, to be removed. He lives in Pennsylvania. We said no. He arrested a U.S. citizen who resides in Turkey, and that's now the famous Pastor Bronson. Tragic that he is in prison. He's now under house arrest. And this dispute has really broiled over, and that is why the tariffs on aluminum steel are being issued by the Trump administration at a time when Turkey is in a financial crisis with the lira, their currency, being significantly devalued against the dollar, and inflation is spiraling up out of control.
So they could significantly diffuse this situation if they sent Pastor Brunson back.
Yeah. Do
you think they will?
The political dispute eases dramatically. I think these sanctions that they're imposing on Turkey are going to hurt them at a time when they're in financial crisis, and they've got banks that are affected in Turkey because they've been loaning money to Turkey for years, and they're tied up in this. So it's going to impact in Europe as well. There'll be a little bit of a contagion here, not a massive one like what happened in Greece. So it's got implications, more pressure be on Erdogan. The most of the pressure, I think, is going to come from his people, to be frank about it, because they're every single day it's getting worse.
Absolutely, and Iran may be the same situation. And perhaps that's what we are not inciting, but sort of creating an environment that puts the pressure and the encouragement in some regard on the people of Turkey and the people of Iran. But what about the connection between Turkey and Russia? And, you know, do they see an alliance there that's could potentially be dangerous?
Are they undermining the alliance?
We're frustrated with them this is over Syria. And the reality is that the Turks' argument with us is we're supporting the Syrian Kurds, who was the main ground force guided by Special Operations Force from the United States to defeat ISIS in their caliphate in eastern Turkey. They look at Syrian Kurds as terrorists in their mind. They're tied to they are connected to a terrorist organization that's trying to topple the regime and carve out Kurdistan inside of Turkey and Syria. But
see, they pulled that bullshit. It's a regime when we want to talk about it like it's an ally, and it's a government when they are an ally.
With Iran, that are actually operating against our interests in Syria. So that frustration is there, and it actually goes back to ISIS. ISIS would never have moved from 600 Iraqi fighters to 14,000 in 6 months, and then in 18 months, 30,000, if Erdogan didn't have his border open. Even though we were saying shut it down, even though he said I've got to shut down, he let it happen because he strategically made a serious mistake. He thought that ISIS would go against the regime and take it down. He didn't understand. ISIS was interested in its own geography, which was east in Iraq and south in Saudi Arabia.
Oh, boy.
How about that?
That was a lot to take in.
Smart cookie, bro.
Yeah.
Well, he talks a lot about Iran. He's not wrong about Iran in not wanting direct conflict. And, you know, we aired a story on this show not that long ago where we actually showed the Iranians doing war games. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Yeah.
We showed all the little speedboats with the machine guns mounted on them.
Yeah, the Vice City type stuff.
Right, and they were talking then about shutting down the Strait of Hormuz.
So
remember?
They're still just talking about it.
Well, I mean, let's look at this from the outsider's perspective. Okay, so he's right, in that they don't want a direct conflict with the military. But guess what else is happening? I mean, we just watched them saber rattle for how many months about enriching uranium, and now they're shooting missiles. So maybe we should take them seriously.
Well, yeah, of course we should. And we are, right? I mean, fuck.
Of course. I mean, they're an adversary. Their population is basic. Well, I personally
kind of find it interesting that we're
oppressed.
Kind of find it interesting that we're pulling in Turkey now, whereas like just a couple of weeks ago it was just Russia and Iran, and then before that it was just Russia. It's like, okay, now we're picking up on more of these, more of their allies, and we're throwing them into the fray. Trying, I guess,
it's really funny the situation with Turkey,
putting them into a corner.
Yeah, which isn't wrong, but at the same time, like with Turkey, like. Man, I don't think they're going to be in NATO that much longer.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you there.
If they keep up what they're doing, they may not be in NATO much longer. But then again, let's be honest about this. Trump just met with NATO, and he just told Germany that they need to pay up their bills because they're getting most of their energy from Russia. So, what you can do about that? Like, the whole situation. Strategically speaking, over there is completely screwed up. I think the only reason that we keep NATO up as a pretense is because we know that we can keep the balancing act going, and it allows us to have force projection across the world.
Good deal. Good point.
Yeah, I think. Yeah. All right, so that's kind of a hefty clip for our first one. Let's go into Korea. So. Korea is more of a Korea-related story than it is an actual story about the North Korean state. Apparently, we're finally taking steps against the Chinese and Russian smuggling operations that are going on. Mm-hmm. And mind you, we're taking actions against the ones that are backed by the states. So hopefully we can managed to get a blockade going, but let's see what the news has to say about it.
And now the United States has targeted 3 Chinese and Russian companies with North Korea-related sanctions. The U.S. Treasury imposed sanctions on a Russian port service agency.
I'm back. I'm sorry.
2 Chinese firms for aiding North Korean ships
to
sell alcohol and tobacco to Pyongyang in breach of U.S. sanctions. The Treasury said the Chinese entity and its Singapore-based affiliate netted over $1 billion a year. That's through trade with North Korea. Russian-based firm also provided port services to North Korean-flagged ships. Washington has been pressuring Pyongyang into giving up its nuclear weapons program. However, the North says the U.S. is backpedaling on promises it made during a Kim-Trump-Singapore summit talks in June. North Korea has described U.S. proposals on denuclearization as, quote, gangster-like.
I feel like we've seen this clip before already.
Think so?
Yeah, I kind of feel like
it. Now to Leesburg is Mr. Mike Billington from the Asia Desk of the Executive Intelligence Review. Hello, Mr. Billington. Pleasure to have you back on the program, sir. Your thoughts on, Donald Trump could show a little bit of goodwill and stop, letting his administration go after things that have to do with North Korea, especially when Pyongyang has shown actually that it's willing to try to break down its nuclear arsenal. Your thoughts on these latest sanctions on Russian and Chinese firms?
Well, first of all, they're meaningless sanctions. These are against companies that don't do business with the U.S., so there's no impact of sanctions. This is another example of the fact that Trump is isolated within his own administration. He is very publicly committed to the peace with North Korea. He has, despite all of the British and neocon hysteria about Trump being played by Kim Jong-un, he has stood his ground. He said things are going well. There are ongoing discussions between U.S. and North Korean and South Korean and North Korean officials, and this is moving forward. But the reason it worked is because Trump was working with China and Russia. Don't make any mistake about that. The reason the North Koreans had reason to trust Trump is because he has stood up against the hysteria in the United States over the last decades about Russia and China being some sort of enemies. And this, of course, has taken on huge context right now with the Russiagate effort to literally bring Trump out of office, precisely because he has insisted that he wants to be friends with both Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping. So while he has been isolated in the administration and been forced to a grant, like, for instance, in this case, the Treasury
friends with your
Department
enemies, not your friends,
to implement these rather meaningless but symbolic sanctions. The point is he's proceeding with the intent of, once he has defeated this Russiagate scam, and believe me, we are now in a situation where the people who ran this coup attempt against the United States on behalf of the British, run by British MI6 Christopher Steele and Dear Love.
Oh, man, he's hit hard.
People like Brennan, whom Trump today removed his security clearance, Brennan and Clapper and Comey, these people are going to be on trial themselves. The so-called investigators are now being investigated by actual patriots in this country for a coup
in the United States.
Yeah. What?
Perfect.
What?
You like that?
Stop from making friends with Russia.
Is it happening?
China, and in that way,
should I get the tinfoil
to places like Korea?
No, we're only at happening level 4.
Also in the Middle East,
okay.
Despite the very angry terms and actions he's taken against Iran, I'm quite certain that what Trump wants to do here is to work with Russia and with China and the new Silk Road to bring a solution to Syria where the U.S. gets its troops out, as Trump has insisted he wants to do, and in exchange for Iran also getting out and the Turks also getting out, and allowing sovereignty in Syria with the protection of Israel, of course. But that this is based on a wide solution to get the Saudis to stop backing the Al-Qaeda connected networks, and to actually bring about a situation where the British-controlled hysteria throughout the Middle East, Sunni versus Shia, Jew versus Arab, and so forth, can be resolved through peace, through development, through the new Silk Road. Lyndon LaRouche and our work with the Chinese on the new Silk Road is the only basis on which this Middle East
they've been talking a lot about that
war created by the British, by their creation of Israel and their creation of Saudi Arabia, can be, in fact, defeated. And it's for that reason that the British and their allies amongst the neocons and the liberal Democrats in the United States are frantic to bring down the president and to try to effectively turn this country back to the war party, for a war with Russia, a war with China, and more regime change wars, which Trump is absolutely opposed to.
Thank you.
Is the real.
Thank you much for joining us, Mr. Mike Billington from Leesburg, from the Asia desk of the.
Go ahead and kill it.
How did we just?
Ooh! I said, ooh, that felt good. That felt good.
That was everything.
Did he just say that he thought that Clapper was going to go on trial? Did he just say that Comey might wind up on trial? Man.
Gee, that was every point. That was, oh man, that was a shit ton of points right there. That was.
You're welcome.
That hit all the good feels. All of them.
So, basic takeaways from this video is that, there's a couple companies in Russia and China that are doing smuggling. They may or may not be backed by the government. And Trump has initiated some sanctions against them. Unfortunately, the companies don't do business in the U.S., so can't really do much against them here. But they're no longer allowed to do business here if they want, so that's kind of cool. So it's not really a half measure, it's like a preventative measure.
Well,
if you know they have AIDS, then make sure that you prevent them from fucking you.
Always prevent them from fucking you.
Hey, welcome back, by the way, dude.
Yeah. Hi, please.
Yeah, sorry, man. My daughter had some stuff to talk about, and she wouldn't let me go. I apologize.
Hey, man.
Being a dad is a tough job.
Got to do it sometimes.
Exactly. All right, let me take a look at where we're at here.
Looks like we're done in Korea, and we're moving on to Israel.
Yes, sir. So the next segment on Israel is actually just kind of it's like a check-in. We don't really have a whole lot going on over there. I mean, don't get me wrong, Gaza border is still bloody. They're still fighing with Palestinians. It's, not a picnic over there.
But you
not
gotta
much
check in with once in a while.
Exactly. We do try to check in with all of our, we try to check in with the hot spots, I feel. So let's go ahead and roll the tape and get caught up on U.S. military aid numbers to Israel.
Roll the tape? What generation are you, man?
Right?
This one?
Here's why it's a bad thing.
We have a lot of aid that goes to Israel. I like this video because it goes straight to the actual laws.
Favoritism towards Israel. First of all, there's nothing wrong with showing favoritism toward an ally.
We stand with Israel because her cause is our cause. Her values are our values. And her fight is our fight.
So like I said, it's just going to be a real quick, check-in.
$38 billion, wow.
It's a lot of money, bro.
Okay, that just hit me like a clip that I would see somebody share on Facebook without ever actually watching.
Like 34 billion, huh?
Or like now this.
Like a $34 billion brick?
Yeah, like that. Like that. Like, oh,
Well, hey, At least I bring you something that's thought-provoking.
Gotta do it, man.
Gotta do it. All right. So that's pretty much our check-in with Israel. We're they just basically went over all the numbers. So if you're listening, they just talked about different deals that have been worked out with Israel, financial aid, military aid. These packages get signed usually once an administration, it looks like. So it's kind of a quick check-in, just like, hey, this is what's going on. Press TV reported on it, and they're I mean, honestly, dude, we've been watching Press TV for a while. They're kind of, I think they're fair. I mean, to a point. Not bad. They haven't, so. I mean, as far as we've seen, they haven't shilled one way or the other.
As far as I'm aware, I mean, they're kind of shilling towards our favor, I would say.
Exactly. So, I know we've been on this like roll of watching tragic Yemen footage, but unfortunately we're going to that well again.
Okay, let's jump right in.
The casualties of Yemen's war go way beyond the bombs and bullets. Lack of food is the greatest threat. Rana Khalid is weak and severely malnourished. She's 9 years old but weighs only 9 kilograms, the ideal weight for a 1-year-old baby.
Rana has been sick for almost 4 years. I took her to several hospitals. When they failed to treat her, I took her to Al Thawra Hospital. The pediatrician there examined her and found a big stone, 3 centimeters in size, in her kidney.
Press.tv, you guys.
Doctors at Yemen's Al Thawra Hospital in the port city of Hodeidah are doing all they can to save Rana's life.
She was suffering from severe pain in her left side. After diagnosis, we discovered that she has a fully blocked kidney. We managed to do the operation for free, but she didn't get any better due to malnutrition.
Yemen has always been desperately poor, but the war has made things much worse. While food prices rise, incomes have plummeted. With frequent airstrikes, it's difficult for people to leave their homes. The destruction of roads and bridges have limited the supply of vital supplies of food and fuel to a population already suffering.
The nutrition department receives more than 20 cases a week from Hodeidah and neighbouring areas. This is because of the current situation in the country and because of the closure of health centres outside the province due to fear of shelling. Also because of the financial situation and lack of jobs for fathers, families cannot meet their basic needs.
According to the UN, 2.8 million people have been driven away from their homes by the bombing in Yemen. Many of them are living in grim camps in the middle of the country, surviving on meager relief handouts, whose deliveries are few and far between. The World Health Organization is in the middle of a large drive to prevent a recurrence of cholera in northern Yemen. The destruction to the country's water and sanitation facilities has already caused an outbreak which affected more than 1 million people. WHO officials say any major outbreak in the middle of the malnutrition crisis would worsen the humanitarian crisis. Mohamed Adu, Al Jazeera, Djibouti.
My God. It's just getting worse every week, man.
Man, it's the reality. Here's the terrifying reality of the situation: is it's just like that every week. It's not just getting worse every week. It just is the same bullshit dragging on day after day. And honestly, when there's not any major movements, we just keep looking at different tragedies that are happening throughout the country. It's kind of like a reminder of the cost of war.
A reminder of how well we may have it here. Despite all our complaints, everything that we might have an issue with, problem with.
Living in an island nation that is wealthy, it has its benefits. It does have its benefits.
Oh yeah. Indeed it does.
So, since we're pretty much out of the Middle East now, and we're not dealing with Korea, I thought we might turn our attention to the world. And there was actually a huge tragedy in Italy recently.
I heard about that. The bridge collapse, right?
Yeah, there's been I've heard everything under the sun, from laser beams to bad engineering.
Laser beams to bad engineering. So basically,
Yes,
this
sir.
is the call for the tinfoil. Then, yeah.
Yeah, you might need that, but I don't know if they're going to talk about that in the actual clip. I think they stay more on the non-tinfoil side. So you know, better safe than sorry, though.
We'll keep it out on the desk. Let's see.
Tonight, the search for the living is still underway. Rescue teams here in Italy say survivors might be trapped in the rubble, but hope is fading.
Have you heard any tapping, any voices, anything?
We don't have any sign of life currently.
The bridge collapse captured on cell video. 39 people died, including several children. When the bridge's center span gave way. The fall to the mostly dry riverbed below, more than 15 stories. Sylvia Vieri was in her car below as the bridge fell right in front of her.
Silence, gas, smell of gas, smell of steel, full of that. Terrible.
This truck was underneath the bridge and was showered with falling debris. Remarkably, the driver escaped with minor injuries. In those critical first few moments, bystanders joined rescuers.
You just went in and helped.
I helped the people. They opened the door of the car. It's crashed, and policeman. I helped to open the door and put out the person.
You're a hero.
No, I'm normal.
And tonight we're hearing more about the driver of that green truck who narrowly avoided plunging off the bridge. According to Italian media, he was delivering groceries, able to slam on his brakes just as the bridge crumbled. Residents here believe he had an angel on his shoulder.
Grande fortuna.
He was very lucky.
Sì.
Tonight, investigators say they'll look at the design of the bridge, maintenance, and they're hoping the 16 people who survived and are in the hospital will give eyewitness accounts that may be able to explain what caused this catastrophe. Kerry Sanders, NBC News, Genova, Italy.
How about that bridge collapse, man?
That was
weird.
Kind of enlightening, I would say. I don't know.
Kind of nutty. I mean, it kind of reminds me of when California had those bridges collapse in their big earthquake. Was that the San Andreas Fault quake?
I think so. Wasn't that the early 90s?
Yeah, where they had so up here in Washington, they've got that Seattle Way the Alaskan Way viaduct in Seattle, and it's built the same way, where it's like there's posts and arches, and those are like the actual like stands for the bridge slabs, and then they just set these giant slabs of concrete and pavement on top of pegs. So what they're trusting there is the weight of the slab to hold it down. Well, if there's big enough earthquake, it'll jump the pins, which is what they found in California. And so they had giant slabs of concrete falling down, on top of cars and other, roadways. It was crazy. So
that's gnarly.
I mean, yeah, it's crazy.
Something like that happened down here a couple of years ago. Boy, that wasn't good.
Yeah, it's no good, man. No good. And tragedy sucks.
Well,
so,
that's what makes it a tragedy.
We got our viewers. Man, this is going to be a really polarizing clip for our viewers, I think. And the next one is actually about France and the Gap, and fashion, and headscarves in fashion.
Oh boy, might need to get out a helmet.
French
this one's going to be tricky.
Sickened by US high street fashion giant Gap, showing a young Muslim girl wearing a headscarf. Thousands of people have now signed a petition demanding Gap end the ad campaign. The Back to School campaign was shot in New York, but when Gap Kids published the photos and videos on its French social media sites, it sparked a massive outcry. Muslim clothing is a divisive issue in France, with hijab-style head coverings banned in schools. The country's secularity, or separation of state and church, is enshrined in the Constitution, whereas the US First Amendment guarantees freedom of religion and expression. We went onto the streets of Paris to gauge opinion on Gap's move.
It's unacceptable to boycott Gap just because they show a girl with a veil. It's no big deal. A young veiled girl. That's the way she sees things. It's not a concern.
It's not something we are used to. We see women wearing veils, but rarely children. I'm against showing a little girl wearing a veil. I think it's a shame to get such young children involved in very restrictive issues concerning women's freedoms.
Well, we have asked Gap for comment and we'll let you know when they respond. But French politicians are already calling to boycott the brand.
Gap shows a little veiled girl. Marketing promotes submission to Islamism. Where are the Me Too and Out You Pig movements?
Gap continues its submission to Islamism with its posters of veiled little girls. I have denounced several times this rise in power of the veil imposed on little girls, which is an abuse and trampling on our values of equality, freedom and secularism.
Live now to multiculturalism expert Cecile Leroux. Miss Leroux, thank you for joining us on the programme. Now, this ad campaign is praised in the US precisely for showing a veiled girl. So why are so many in France against it, do you think?
Well, first of all, in France, really, when you're thinking of a societal issue, an issue like this, the first thing that should come to their mind is it something that's legal or illegal in France? And this is a picture of a young girl wearing a veil with another girl of a different ethnicity. And it shows, in my opinion, more tolerance than anything else. And there's nothing illegal about it. So as far as the politicians are concerned, that's really the only thing that they should be pronouncing themselves on. Yet instead, they're starting to polemicize and use the theme of Islam, very frankly, to try and make it look bad. And in this case, they're attacking Gap, which is very misplaced on the part of a government. It's really too bad that this government is getting involved in what should be more a debate of opinion. You can like it or not like it, and I think your idea of interviewing people on the streets is excellent. You know, let's see what people think, people talk about it. But as far as the government is concerned, their question should be, okay, is it legal or illegal? In France, putting the veil on in school is illegal. So if the picture were something that were happening in school, then Gap France would have to ask Gap US to make a different picture because they can't put a schoolgirl in a veil.
Yeah. What do you make of, sorry to interrupt, I just want to find out what you make of the French MP's calls to now boycott Gap.
I think it's really unfortunate, to be honest. That's the point that I was trying to make, is that I think it's very unfortunate that a politician should get involved in what should be an opinion debate. And, you know, she might express herself as a citizen and say that if she had a little girl, she wouldn't want to put a veil on her little girl. That's her right.
But if she expressed herself as a citizen, she expressed herself as a politician. That's a catch-22.
Illegal in France, and reacting vis-a-vis Gap based on that and nothing else.
Do young veiled girls have a place in advertising in France?
I think they should have. I think that France, we were just seeing the debate over the very varied nature of the French soccer team who won the World Cup. And there was a lot of debate about how they should be called. And, you know, of course, they're French citizens, but let's not hide the fact that many of them are of African origin. France should embrace its diversity.
Like 75% of them are African immigrants, let's be real.
These pictures should be welcome in France. I used to work in the perfume industry, and France was always very, very free about showing a lot of the female body in perfume advertisements. And if we had clients in other countries who didn't agree with it, or who had laws where you couldn't expose a lady's décolleté or body too much, then we simply provided them with another picture, you know, based on the legality. If France has a problem with that, you know, they can always ask that. But otherwise, the debate should be on the street and among citizens. It should not be a French government calling for a boycott. I think that that's very mean-minded, and it's using the Muslim population as a target to talk in an ugly way.
She's trying to get her mental gymnastics in order. She didn't know what she was going to say.
International. We appreciate it.
So that's the current debate that's going on in France. While Macron has possibly his boyfriend in jail, this is the topic of conversation.
I mean that other topic that you just mentioned, Macron having his possible boyfriend in jail, kind of seems like a bigger issue there than boycotting the Gap over this. I mean, honestly, to me, this is just an issue that's like, who really fucking cares, really? I mean, I
did check on that, by the way. Not much has changed. So I am tracking that story, just so our viewers and so you're aware. I am tracking the Macron bodyguard story. I just haven't seen enough changes for us to do a new segment.
Like the Lincoln fan fiction.
Oh, that's good. Oh, okay. So now that we're done talking about headscarves in France, one thing I did want to mention was that, these other countries where it's illegal, they don't just change the pictures because it's illegal. They change the pictures because it won't fit the marketing in that country, right? You know why they're marketing? Like, do you know why they're marketing to a Muslim population?
Preconditioning the public.
I mean, you could say that, but they got to make money, bro. They're not going to make money off of conditioning the public to be Muslim. I mean, they have an entire line of secular clothing, right?
I guess
so. So why would they be doing that, right?
Are my
the only
jeans
thing I can think
secular
of,
clothing? Or are my jeans secular clothing?
Yeah, I'd say that since women aren't allowed to wear jeans.
I don't know.
Well, that's what I'm saying is they have a ton of African migrants who their population is mostly Muslim, and we can go back and look at the migrant camps in Calais and the other cities in France. They exist. It's real. They have tons of migrants. Do you remember that story we did recently about the migrant boat that had like 900 refugees on it, and Italy turned them down, and then they went to France, and Macron granted them asylum in the country?
Yeah, I was waiting for you to clarify which one.
Boom, dude. That's just one of the more recent ones. Like, that happens all the time. They have tons of Muslims in their country, and they're not, natural French-born citizens. They're from another country.
So from your perspective,
they didn't have this demographic before. So when you hear, the actual like native French citizens saying like this isn't part of our values, why are they doing this? They're doing it because you guys imported a new set of values. That's what happened.
And capitalism, a new market rises. You have to,
Exactly. The market follows social and cultural trends, in my opinion.
There we go.
All right, so we got one more in the world category, and actually we're gonna loop back around and talk a little bit about Turkey. You remember earlier we were talking about how Turkey might not actually have much of a future in NATO.
Oh yeah, you said that.
Well, there's been some issues.
Definitely, and that's actually our next clip is about that particular subject.
Let's run it.
Turkey is already responding in kind to the United States' threat of doubling tariffs on aluminum, metal-related products. President Erdogan now saying that he will go after electronics concerns in the United States, boycott those. You know how this goes. It's fueling and feeding a sort of a tit-for-tat here that could get worse before it gets better. Someone who has been there and knows very much the mood there, just got back from there late last night. She's here with us now, but she looks very awake and spry. Good mood. Could be just that she's just heavily caffeinated. Laura Wells joins us right now. Laura, good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
It is weird, and I'm wondering, you were mentioning during the break, maybe it's this ongoing wrath that President Erdogan now has for the American position on this with the tariffs and everything else, even going after President Trump. Is that how Turkish citizens are seeing it, that it's our fault they're in this trouble?
At this point, largely. President Erdogan and the ruling party have been stoking the anti-Western sentiment for so long. Right now, Turkey has particularly a lot of things, many gripes against the United States. As you mentioned, the new increased tariffs, for instance, problems with, it's not only Pastor Brunson, it's also 12 Turkish-American dual citizens who are in jail, 3 very long-term consulate employees who happen to be Turkish citizens that are now in prison in Turkey, and they did not let the U.S. know beforehand. Many are considered political prisoners, at least by the United States at this point.
But we made a big beef of this only fairly recently. So Turkish citizens, I mean, the runaway inflation, the problems with the bank debt and all that, that was long before this, right?
Most Turks really didn't know what was going on.
Is that right?
90% of the press in Turkey is really pro-government, is controlled somehow directly or indirectly by the government. So we're not even seeing the exchange rate dollar to Turkish lira broadcast on some of the networks anymore. I mean, this is a highly filtered press environment. And really, about 50% of the population really supports President Erdogan. It's a highly nationalistic society. And
so he's made the U.S. the boogeyman, and they're buying that.
Right. Well, and he's talked about the gripes with the United States throughout the years. So you have the fact that the U.S. is supporting some of the Syrian Kurdish fighters in Syria, right. And that's a group which certainly Turkey has been taking on militarily down there. They took over Afrin, and there's a lot of tension in Manbij down there. You also have the fact that Turkey is trying to become more independent of NATO and the U.S. and buying their weaponry or making their weaponry. And they've already signed an agreement and started putting money down for the S-400 anti-missile defense system by Russia, which no one has said will be compatible with NATO. And in fact, it might be able to break the code of the stealth mode of the F-35 fighter jets. So it really could be a real threat to the United States and to NATO.
Which is why some are saying, we're going to kick you out of NATO. Do you think that's likely?
That would be very difficult to do.
Yeah.
Especially with the ongoing sanctions with Iran, and Turkey's a key player right there. They import a lot of gas and oil and have pretty good relations with Iran.
That's it for that clip.
This whole Turkey situation is getting really crazy.
Yeah, Erdogan's asking for it, bro. He has been for a long time.
If he starts buying Russian military equipment, he is going to be in a world of hurt. Yep. Also, it's kind of fun that she talked about stealth fighters, actually. Not that I want to, quickly segue us out of Erdogan. I mean, it's a big deal and everything, but we already kind of exhausted ourselves on him earlier. I actually have a military news segment for this podcast for once.
Oh, hey, look at that. I didn't even see that on
we
the
don't
sheet here.
we don't usually have the military segment because it's hard to find good news on the military because, well, it seems like all the people that do military news segments online are voiceovers by Microsoft Sam. Nobody wants to listen to that. Nobody. Like, it just drives me nuts. Even if it's an actual article where it's just reading the article, it just sounds terrible. Plus, it's not an MSN.
Yeah, I hate those.
So, I did find something pretty cool. The U.S. military is doing experimentation. Honestly, they've probably been doing the experimentation a long time because we're seeing a prototype in this video. But what they're experimenting with is removing the control surfaces from stealth aircraft. And control surfaces, for those of you that are not involved in aviation or have a middling knowledge of it at a very layman level, are the flaps. They're anything that allows you to change the flow of air around the aircraft, around the airframe, so that you can control the movement that you're making. So instead of doing that, what they're trying to do is they're trying to use vectored thrust. So you'll be like change the direction of the thrust and the amount, and then that will allow you to change direction and be more nimble. Also, since they don't have moving surfaces on the aircraft, it's less detectable by radar because radar gets into like corners and bounces out and then reflects back. So it kind of gives you a nice smooth surface. You can apply your stealth technology there.
Well, let's check this bad boy out then. Come on.
It's kind of cool looking.
Typically when you're flying an airplane, you're deflecting control surfaces in order to maneuver or to reject wind gusts. These deflecting surfaces make the airplane more vulnerable to being detected by hostile forces.
Whoa.
We're looking at modern flow control techniques which permit you potentially to be able to control the airplane in flight without the use of any kinds of mechanical surfaces. And we do that with a distributed array of tiny little jets on the surface and trick the aerodynamics into believing that a flap's been deployed where in fact it's not been deployed.
Whoa.
It's a neat technology, man.
Yeah, it is. Loud as shit, too.
Mm-hmm.
Is that loud enough for you, Bella?
Damn.
It'd be fun to have one of those in the backyard, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, dude. You know what that kind of reminds me of? It has a very similar silhouette to the new hypersonic missiles that the Chinese are developing.
Looks like my 8th grade science project.
Just a note there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
go. Okay.
That's pretty.
Yeah, that's it. It's just more footage of this thing being cool.
Yeah, they basically just fly it around a lot, talk a little bit about it, but that's pretty much it. The other clip that we have for our U.S. military segment is Mattis is on the move.
Mattis is on the move. Well, where's he going? What's he doing now?
Starting a tour in Brazil, and then he's going to be going around to South American countries, I believe.
Oh, dude, is he taking Aerosmith?
I don't know about that.
You think I'm kidding?
Is he an Aerosmith guy?
Secretary of Defense James Mattis arrived in Brasilia, Brazil, last night on his first diplomatic visit.
Brazil? Yeah, Brazil.
Brazil and the U.S. are the Western largest.
This lady's never seen a teleprompter in her life.
The U.S. is working to expand partnerships
She doesn't know what they
where
say.
it's mutually beneficial. Correspondent Wyatt Goolsby reports from the Pentagon. Good evening, Wyatt.
What a name.
Good evening, Lauren. Secretary Mattis' tour of South America comes as the region is dealing with political and diplomatic upheaval. The Pentagon is concerned this could have a wider destabilizing effect, which is why security will be Mattis' top priority. The Pentagon chief arriving in Brazil for the start of a week-long diplomatic tour focused on mutual security threats. Brazil is the first of 4 stops. There, Mattis is meeting military and national security counterparts. Brazil's health ministry has launched a nationwide vaccination campaign to protect children from measles and polio. This after a measles outbreak in the north, where thousands of Venezuelan refugees are crossing the border to flee their country's economic and political crisis. Many Venezuelans are sick and haven't been immunized due to a failing health system. Mattis' second stop is Argentina. It will be the first visit by an American defense secretary since 2005. Pro-lifers in the majority Catholic country have been celebrating since Thursday, when their Senate rejected a bill that would have allowed elective abortion in the first 14 weeks of pregnancy. His next stop, Chile. There, Chilean prosecutors have expanded their investigation into alleged abuse by Catholic clergy members. Pope Francis earlier this year publicly denounced a culture of abuse and cover-up and has accepted the resignation of some Chilean bishops. Mattis' final stop is Colombia. There, he'll visit with administration officials of the newly elected Colombian president, Iván Duque.
Una nueva generación motivada por el servicio y no por el ejercicio vanidoso del poder.
The 42-year-old Washington, D.C. educated lawmaker is the youngest person to be elected to the country's presidency. Venezuelan refugees are likely to be the focus. Just like in Brazil, tens of thousands of Venezuelans have fled across the border, with more coming every day. The Trump administration says Venezuela's president, Nicolas Maduro, and his socialist government is to blame for the humanitarian crisis. Over the weekend, Maduro said he would allow FBI officials to come to Venezuela and investigate a failed attack on his life. This, even though Venezuelan authorities allege that the perpetrators of the attack were trained in Colombia and that some were being harbored in Florida.
The other big topic Mattis will be talking about at each of his stops is security concerns of Nicaragua. Now, thousands of Nicaraguans continue to flee their country since a crackdown on protests by President Daniel Ortega. The current unrest began in April when Ortega imposed cuts to social security system, and small protests by senior citizens began, and they were actually violently broken up. Lauren?
Damn. It's cutting down on their entitlements. So basically what we're hearing is that Mattis is going to be traveling throughout South America for a little while and Central America. And there's a shitload of security concerns, especially since he's in basically the murder capital of the world right now.
Nice.
You guys remember when they had the Brazilian Olympics and like the Olympic athletes were getting, mugged outside the stadium?
I thought not just outside the stadium, but also within the camp.
What the hell was that?
Yeah, dude. Well, there were also videos that came out during the Olympics. It'd be like some guy on a motorcycle would roll up with a helmet on. You'd see that you had something he wanted. So just shoot you a few times, take it, and leave. Just brutal. Brutal. It's like the whole country's like Detroit.
Oh my goodness.
I don't actually mean that. I'm joking. Half joking. They got a real crime problem down there.
No, I know. I'm just trying to find out a better way to one-up you, but I just can't come up with anything.
No, you're good. Okay, so we got actually a pretty big U.S. news segment this week. You messed up?
Oh, no, I mean, I'm just saying it is messed up.
Yeah, it is. So we kind of went around the world. Now we're coming back home again. And, man, it has been a good week because Peter Strzok got fired.
Fuck
Word. About damn time.
That little weasel had it coming.
Although, you might not be so happy when you see the rest of the clips political, because he got fired, but it's not all bad news for him.
All right, welcome back to Velshi and Rule. We got some breaking news we were just telling you about before we went to the break. FBI Special Agent Peter Strzok has been fired from the FBI. A lot of you will say, well, wasn't he already fired? He was fired from the Mueller, or he was moved from the Mueller investigation. Strzok was a controversial figure in the Justice Department's investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election and the investigation into possible cooperation with the Trump campaign. Pete Williams is covering the story for us. Pete, again, I think a lot of people thought Strzok was already out. He was still an employee of the FBI.
I'm completely confused.
Oh, yes, that's right. He was removed from the Mueller investigation last year after Robert Mueller was told by the Justice Department's Inspector General about the discovery of these text messages between Strzok and Lisa Page, who was the FBI's counsel's office. But he continued to be an employee. But the further blow to him was some devastating language in the Inspector General's report that came out earlier this year, just a short time ago, within the last month or so, that revealed some new text messages between Strzok and Page. And after that, the FBI director, Christopher Wray, said that the FBI would undertake a change in the FBI's culture to make sure this sort of thing didn't happen again, and that appropriate disciplinary steps would be taken. Now, his legal counsel has told the Washington Post that first reported this firing, which I've since confirmed with some law enforcement officials. His lawyer is saying that this is not the normal way this should have happened, that he should have been afforded the complete disciplinary process, but that instead the FBI's deputy director, David Bowditch, informed Strzok on last Friday, that he would be fired. So whether he'll undertake legal action, remember that the FBI's former deputy director, Andrew McCabe, has talked about legal action against the FBI and the Justice Department for how he was fired. He says there was presidential influence. Whether they're going to undertake legal action here, I don't know, but his lawyer has said that the way this has been handled is very irregular. But the other thing to note about this, of course, is Strzok has been the probably single most often cited reason that some Republicans in the House have been critical of the investigation, of the FBI, of the Justice Department. So removing him certainly takes away what has been a very sore point for congressional Republicans who have been critical of the Mueller investigation.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MS.
Oh, Kit! Kill him! You do not let Chris Hayes in here. He's so quick. Oh my God! You cut his foot off at the door. So basically, what we got out of that was Peter Strzok fucked up, and they may have let him go without due process. They may have skipped a few T's, may have left a few I's undotted. So we may see this come back to bite them. And, in a big way, too, because, Peter Strzok had something happen to him as soon as he quit. And they talk about it in the next clip. Don't let the cat out of the bag, though. The audience is going to want to hear this one.
An anti-Trump Twitter account from fired FBI agent Peter Strzok.
On it, a GoFundMe page looking to raise $150,000, now upping the total to $350,000 to cover his legal costs.
Now I need double.
Is this for real?
Charlie Shimkus with Fox News Headlines 24/7, Sirius XM 115, here with reaction online.
He needs $1/3 to make a series about video games.
Yesterday may have been a big payday for Peter Strzok. A GoFundMe page
How much do you think Comey donated?
Called themselves the Friends of FBI agent Peter Strzok has raised over $200,000 in less than 24 hours. Now, the page says the money will go to his growing legal fees and lost income. A Twitter account also using his name promoted that GoFundMe page, and it also says this: deeply saddened by this decision, it has been an honor to serve my country and work for the fine men and women of the FBI. A lot of folks talking about his termination on social media. Kelly says he should have been fired a long time ago. I wouldn't give a dime. And Shane on social media also saying, finally, something positive to report to resurrect respect for the FBI's integrity. Now, President Trump tweeted about his termination yesterday using the word finally. So he kind of celebrated it as well.
He did, because should have been done a while ago.
I accidentally jumped into the other one before that.
No. You're good. You're good. Just go ahead and pause that for a second.
Oh, yeah.
Because when you watched the hearing, right?
Yes. Which one?
The Strzok hearing.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. All this weird fidgeting and faces and shit.
Okay, so if you watch the Strzok hearing, you remember a moment where Goodlatte was talking to Strzok. And Goodlatte's the chairman of the committee, just, for cheater score, for you guys out there that don't know the names. Goodlatte, the head of the committee, talking to Strzok. And he tells Strzok during his questioning period that he will not want him to talk to the FBI's counsel, because this is not about the FBI. This is about you.
That was hilarious.
He gets a lot of pushback, right? And then eventually what winds up happening is that his lawyer talks to the FBI lawyer. That's what winds up happening. Now, I think this firing echoes of that moment in the courtroom. Personally, to me, like, they resonate a little bit. And so I wonder if the ball wasn't rolling on this before they even went into the hearing.
I couldn't doubt you there. Mainly because I don't know for 100% for sure, and it also does sound plausible.
Well, that and you can't disprove a negative. We're just spitballing here. So I wish we had a banner that just said that Breadbox is speculating with a big siren on top. But we don't have that right now.
We're not Drudge here. We're not Drudge.
Right. All right. So we're pretty much out of the woods with Strzok, at least for this week. And the next thing we kind of check in on is Trump has finally, thrown the gloves down and said no more security clearances for profiteers.
You're going to need to tell me when to cut on this one, unless we're watching all 14 minutes of this.
We're not going to watch all. Hey, can you do me a favor and refresh the screen share?
Let's see. Absolutely. Let's jump in.
Just
Technical moment.
Kill it and then restart it. Because it's been a spinning wheel for me for about the last half hour.
What?
Okay,
let's try this again. Let's try it again.
Mine was working,
just
bro.
that good. Yeah, well, I mean, I suck. It's okay.
Okay, how's that?
There we go. There's that hideous CNN logo.
Yeah. All right. Technical difficulties over with.
He says most of what he means to say in the beginning. The big thing to take away from this clip is, I don't think he's calling the president treasonous anymore.
A scathing op-ed in the New York Times out just this morning. You see the title there. President Trump's claims of no collusion are hogwash, adding that the decision to revoke his security clearance is, in Brennan's words, an attempt to scare into silence others who might dare to challenge him. Reference to the president there. With that in mind, the White House has released a list of 9 other former and current officials in the intelligence community and the Department of Justice whose security clearance, we're told, is now under review.
One of those people is James Clapper, the former director of national intelligence, current
CNN
right national security analyst, and former director Clapper joins us right now. Thank you so much for being with us. And we know more now about why the president revoked John Brennan's security clearance and why he is threatening to revoke yours. The president tells us through the Wall Street Journal, and he said these words out loud, it's because of your involvement at the beginning of the Russia investigation. This is what the president said, just to be crystal clear about this. He says, I call it the rigged witch hunt. It is a sham, and these people led it. He added, so I think something that had to be done. Something that had to be done because you were part of the team initially concerned about the Russian cyber attack on the U.S. election. Your response?
Frames are dropping.
Well, I find this candid admission, very disturbing because, first of all, the 4 of us that were involved in putting together the intelligence community assessment, which we published on the 6th of January 2017, that is
16 intelligence.
Comey, John Brennan,
I thought it was
and
17.
Admiral Mike Rogers, then the director of NSA.
Oh, you're right, it was 17.
And what we focused on was the Russian meddling in our political process. Continues yet today, as has been affirmed by the current crop of